Hello, I'm Tasha June, and we are just getting ready to have our second Redbud IG Live conversation in a series called Telling Our Stories Conversations on Writing by Women of Color. And today, Dorina Lazzo Gilmore-Young is going to be joining us, and so we're just waiting now for her to join, and then I'll let her in and we will go ahead and start our conversation. Hey guys, so glad you guys are here. Just waiting for Dorina to show up so we can start our interview with her and hear more about what her experience as a writer has been. So whenever she shows up here, we will let her in and then we'll get started. There she is. Woohoo. All right. She should be popping up anytime now. Let's see. Oh, there she is. Hey, Dorina.
Hi, friend. Sorry it took my internet a minute to get loaded here. It wasn't letting me see that you were on.
Oh, weird. It does funny things, you know, like with the last live that I did, it would not let me upload a cover. Like no matter what I would do, it kept asking me if I wanted one. And then every time I hit the cover, it just, you know, sometimes it does its own thing. So, yay, you're here though.
We made it. Yay.
Yay. It's fun to see people pop in. Oh, so
Hi, Tasha.
I already said this, but I'm Tasha June, and this is Dorina, and I'm going to introduce her in a little bit. But we are here for our second Redbud Live IG conversation in a series called Telling Our Stories, Conversations on Writing by Women of Color. And Dorina is here to share more about her journey. And I know you guys are just in for a treat because she's got so much to share. Dorina Lazzo Gilmore-Young has she's done so many things, and I'm constantly amazed when I go back and read your bio, Dorina, because we're friends and I know a lot of the story, but I mean, she has been a journalist. She's written a children's book, which is actually really near and dear to our hearts. She's written a devotional. She is just a wealth of information about the writing journey. So we're so happy to have you, Dorina. And can you tell us where you are right now and who you live with and just what life looks like for you today?
Oh, thanks, Tasha. It's a joy to be here. I live in Central California, and I live with my husband, Sean, and I have three daughters, Meilani, Giada, and Zayla, and they are 10, 12, and my oldest is turning 15 tomorrow. So
oh my gosh.
I'm in the throes of elementary, junior high, and high school, and just busy mama and trying to be a writer and speaker full-time, mostly when my kids are at school.
And today is their last day, you said?
Yes, yeah. Today is their last day. They actually get out at noon, which is in less than an hour. So I'm joyful and excited.
Yes, that and it's such a treat that you would even be here. So thank you for being willing to have this conversation, especially like in your last hour of freedom before they get home. Okay, so for those of you that don't know what Redbud is, Redbud is a movement of Christian women who create community and who influence culture and faith. And I am a newer member, but already in the last few months that I've been involved, it has been such an encouragement to me as a writer. So I'm really thankful for them. If you don't know who they are, I would encourage you to go check them out. They'll be tagged here. And you can also just Google them online or even find them on Facebook and elsewhere. But it's been an incredible group of women to get to know so far, and I haven't even gotten to know all of them. So a very diverse group of writers. Dorina, how long have you been involved, and how did you get connected with Redbud?
You know, I haven't been part of Redbud for that long either. It's, I think, been about a year since I joined, and it's because of some of our mutual friends, Grace, no, actually, I think it was Aaliyah Joy who told me about it, and I have some other friends who are part of the Hope Writers group who are also in Redbud who just really spoke highly of the group. I think it's such a generous group and so many women who are publishing and speaking, and I really joined because I wanted to learn from them.
That's really cool. It's cool that we have that there are a lot of writing communities out there. And I love how you said that they're generous, because yeah, that's been true of my experience so far as well. All right, so we have like a short amount of time, so we're just going to go ahead and dive in. Can you tell us a little bit about your writing journey and kind of where it began and what it's looked like for you in a nutshell up until now?
Oh, it's so hard for me to share this story succinctly. So I'm going to kind of skip a rock over some of the things that I've done and the ways that God has opened doors for me. I mean, honestly, I like to tell people, especially when I speak in schools, that my writing journey began in first grade, because that was the first time that I really believed I was a storyteller. And I had an amazing teacher named Mrs. Kaczynski who just encouraged me that I was a writer. And through her words of encouragement, just helped me to believe that I could be a writer and an author one day. And I know that's not everyone's story, but I want to just give honor to all of the teachers out there, because your words of encouragement make a huge difference. And I know in schools, there's not as much time for creative writing as there was when I was little. So I just want to say it's still important. So I kind of pursued writing through my school years. I got involved in the student newspaper in junior high and high school, and I had the opportunity to do a journalism program one of the summers that was put on in the city of Chicago, where I grew up, that was specifically for students who were students of color, to just expose them to writing, journalism, broadcast, radio. And that, again, was a significant thing for me as a young person, because I began to see that there was a place for me and my voice, particularly being from a multiracial background, and just speaking life and helping me make some connections and mentors through that. So I ended up pursuing journalism, and in college also was an English lit major and a journalism major. And then I worked for the newspaper here in Fresno, California, straight out of college. And that too was just such a rich experience, because not only was I honing my craft as a writer, learning how to incorporate description and details as a features writer, but I also had the opportunity to interview so many people because of it being a journalistic style of writing. And I live in a very diverse part of the country and the state. And so I love just learning about all of these different immigrant populations that came to our area, and being able to write their stories, experience different parts of arts and books and culture and music that were connected to that. And that sort of launched me as a writer. And then after that, I actually went into my children's book writing, which was a secret dream of mine for lots of years. And I ended up pursuing a master's degree in children's literature and MFA, and had 3 books that were published. I think you referenced my most recent book, which is Cora Cook's Pancit. And that book was actually published 11 years ago. So my baby is pushing into middle school. But that was my first children's book. And I would say in this season of life, just to kind of fast forward, I'm writing mostly nonfiction. I write devotionals, and I'm a storyteller over at Encourage, which I know, Tasha, you're a part of as well.
Yeah. Dorina, so I'm kind of taken aback, because I think just hearing the story and hearing about how many different ways that you've written, and just different genres and media, that is just really amazing. And I think a lot of times, and I don't know if this is true for those that are listening or other writers that will listen to this, but a lot of times I think, at least I was given the impression that you have to kind of choose one and stay there. But that's really neat. And you are just so gifted to be able to do all of those different things. I love what you said too about the program that you were a part of that was for people, writers of color, journalism. That's really neat. I didn't know that about your story. So thank you for sharing about that, and even I guess giving us hope that we can kind of explore different avenues of writing,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. How has being a woman of color, and you kind of hit on this a little bit in the earlier part of your journey, and specifically an Asian American woman, impacted your writing?
Oh, that's such a big question. And honestly, I'm still learning and processing that a lot. I think in different seasons of our lives, we have sort of different awareness and layers of awareness about our cultural identity. And so growing up in my family, I mentioned before that I grew up in a multiracial family. So my dad's side of the family is predominantly Filipino, but also Chinese, Polynesian, and Indian. And then my mom's side of the family is Italian. But my mom's just passion and love is for cultures of the world. She was a teacher for 30 years, and she taught cultures of the world. She taught folk dance, social studies. And so as I was growing up as a teacher's daughter, she really helped me to believe that being multiracial was a gift. I like to say like a superpower, because we always got to see it as something that was a value, that we could be bridge builders. And when I say we, I mean like my brother and my sister. This was something that we really valued in our family. And so I grew up with that awareness, but I don't think it was really until I went to college and even post-college, and now in my 40s, that I realized some of the nuances of being multiracial and also an Asian American woman writing in this space. And so I've definitely had challenges along the way, particularly in my children's book writing, you know, just to be vulnerable and raw about it. I have had many books rejected through the years. It is part of the publishing process, as those who are writing here who might be listening, we know. But I think one of the things that was hardest is along the road, and it's, you know, I've been working in children's publishing for almost 15 years now, just so many agents and publishers and writers along the way who encouraged me that I was a great writer, that I was a good storyteller, that they were interested in my work. Even going through a couple different agents who were so affirming, but often getting rejections from publishers because they said, well, what you're writing about is too niche. It's too small of an audience who would buy a book like this. And so it was like this little seed, this little light in me, that I knew that these stories were important. I knew they were the stories of my heart, but it was a lot of years of kind of hearing that over and over again. Like, we like your stories, you're a good writer, but we don't know how we can sell these. And so that's where sort of the business of publishing collides with, you know, the stories of our hearts and the craft.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you shared that. That's so hard, because you're talking about years of kind of working through getting that message. And when I even hear you say that, and even in my own experience, which is different, but it's like this message that it's somehow not valuable, you know, to the world, valuable enough to invest in. At least that's kind of like what I have taken away. And so I know we've had conversations before, and you've been such an encouragement to me. But how do you, so this is kind of veering off, but how did you kind of push past that message of too niche? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into it, right? I mean, as writers, especially, like, we have to try to figure out how to silence the voices that would discourage us, and how to discern which voices are the ones who are really going to push us towards excellence and being better writers. And so that was something that was difficult. You know, admittedly, through the years, that was so hard. And I'm so grateful I have a couple of women who have been a part of my critique group for children's book writing. And it was their voices in my ear, especially my friend Amy Dixon, who's also a children's book writer, who was continually affirming me, this is good. What you are writing is important. These details are you and your voice. And so just having a few people who encouraged me through that, I think kind of helped me just persevere in that. And you know, that's specifically children's book writing that I'm talking about. So I have to say, you know, God opened a lot of doors for me in other areas. And as I talked about, you know, writing in different genres really also helped me kind of push past that. So I did a lot in the spoken word and kind of poetry field, especially when I was in my 20s. And then now in this season, writing more for a Christian audience, talking about my story of grief, talking about my multicultural heritage. There has been value that has been placed in some of those other genres. And so I'm grateful for those voices that helped me along the way.
That's so good. I'm so glad for them too, just in knowing and being able to watch your story unfold and you being a voice to me. So that's really cool. How can we, those of us that are listening, anyone that would listen in, those of us that read your work, those of us that are aspiring to write, how can we support you as a writer of color?
You know, this is such an important question. And in some ways, it's a little bit awkward to answer, but I want to boldly say it today because it's not just about me, it's about all writers of color. Mm-hmm. We need support. And in the landscape that publishing is right now, it's not enough to be a good writer or to have a compelling story. Mm-hmm. We actually need an avenue for our stories to be distributed and scattered and valued. And, you know, unfortunately, the situation is that a lot of writers of color do not have huge platforms. And so people coming alongside and sharing, you know, whether it's a one-to-one recommendation or sharing on their social media, writing Amazon reviews, all of those things are really key. And so I am hugely grateful for the friends who have come alongside me, especially Encourage, which has been an amazing platform of being able to share my story on a regular basis. I write monthly for them, as do you, Tasha. These are some of the ways that it is really important for writers of color to just gain that support. And, you know, it's unfortunate in some ways that it is that way, but it is true. Yeah. And I know I'm not at liberty to share all the details, but I'm in the process right now of some new contracts and some new books, and I'm so excited about those. That's exciting. And I know that those relationships and those connections would not have happened if it wasn't for social media and friends who are willing to share and friends who are coming alongside to support in that way. Yeah,
I'm so glad you shared that because it is hard to say, but it's just the truth. And yeah, so thank you. Thank you for saying that boldly for you and for all of us. What advice do you have for other women of color who aspire to write, or maybe are just thinking about, you know, getting out there, or maybe even thinking like they want to give up because of everything that you've shared, like kind of the barriers, you know, that are out there?
Well, first of all, I think we have to discern, do we have a story that God has given us to write and to speak? And I think sometimes we kind of get what do they say, the cart before the horse, because we have our sights set on this big thing of publishing the book and the success of it and what that's going to look like. But I really have been working on this too, of just remembering that the message and the story that God's given me is unique. No matter if it reaches, you know, thousands and millions of people, or even if it's something that He has designed for my 3 daughters, or for my church community, or for my local city. And so it's not to say that we shouldn't be ambitious or that we shouldn't set goals and dreams, but I think it is so important for us to remember that the story itself is something that God has given us. And so we have to be true to that story. So my encouragement is to write the story. Write the story if you're a writer, or to put it in some different formats, whether that's, you know, Instagram blogging, which I do a lot, kind of micro blogging, or if it's preparing a spoken word or putting together an outline for a sermon that might be shared in a church setting or at an event. But at the heart of it, we have to find that story. And then there's that place of honing our craft and improving it and, you know, doing all the editing. And that is absolutely important as well. But sometimes I think we get so caught up in all those other layers that we lose the heart of our story. And honestly, that's kind of what happened to me with some of my books, is because I began to believe that those stories were not important because I was listening to some of those external voices. And so it's a full circle experience that I'm having right now when I'm listening to a publishing board say to me, this story is valuable. We want this story right now. It's for such a time as this that we would publish something. I mean, one of the books I wrote 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And so I'm saying that because I want to encourage people in that. And particularly for women of color, we are in a cultural moment where people are hungry for these stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of opportunity right now. And I'm seeing even some of my author sisters who I have followed for years, people like Bonnie Gray, who writes with us at Encourage, people like Ruth Cho Simons, who I've followed for lots of years, who are now telling their stories of their cultural heritage,
Mm-hmm.
of their identity. And those books are coming out this year. And so to me, I see that even people who have been doing this for a long time are just beginning to find that market for their cultural heritage stories.
Yeah. Yeah. That gives me chills, Dorina, like when you said that you wrote one of those books 10 years ago, and that you have kind of held on to that story. You haven't discarded it. You've held on to it, and then you've tried again, right? I mean, that is just, so I just hear this message of perseverance and patience, I guess, in that, you know. I mean, you've been so patiently still valuing that story and holding on to it, even though it wasn't out there for anyone else. So thank you
sometimes
for
the
that.
time isn't right. I think that's one of my biggest things that I've learned through publishing journey, is that sometimes the timing isn't right. It doesn't mean that the story isn't right. And so don't be too impressed with my patience. There's been some times along the way where I just felt like, I can't do this. Why am I going to do this? I'm going to throw this in the garbage, you know, or just keeping it in a file on my computer and giving it time to rest, but believing that little seed in my heart that there will be a time in the future.
That's huge. I loved how you said the time isn't right, but that doesn't mean the story's not right. I'm going to hold on to that for a little bit. Can you tell us, I mean, you mentioned Cora Cook's Pancit. Can you tell us about your devotional and also this new project that you're doing, the Global Glory Chasers? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I have to show you the cover because I know it's so fun for people to see covers.
I'm so glad.
So this is the book that just came out in September. It's called Walk, Run, Soar. And this is definitely a departure from anything I've done before. This is a devotional book that I wrote just in conjunction with my husband, Sean. And so it was a joint project. I did the storytelling and the devotional writing. And then because it has a running theme, he is a running coach. So he came alongside and wrote these kind of tips for runners and walkers. And we made some journaling space at the end of each devotional so people could reflect on the devotional and the scripture, but also reflect on whatever type of exercise they were doing. If they were going out for a run or for a walk, and they could write down not only their mileage, but maybe something they saw along the way, a way that God made himself just present for them as they were doing it. So it's been such a fun project. We are runners kind of as our hobby, and we're coaches. We love to coach track and field for our daughters and cross country. So I never really imagined that this would be one of the books on my list, but it's something that I naturally talk about. I naturally gravitate towards these metaphors that are all throughout God's word about running and walking and what we can learn from that practice. So that's a little bit about Walk, Run, Soar.
I love it.
And then you mentioned the Global Glory Chasers, which is actually something we just launched this month. And again, something very new. You can probably tell that I am wired as a person who loves to try new things. So this is partly why I've tried a lot of different genres and some different projects. But what we have done is put together a membership, which is a monthly membership for families or individuals. We are doing this in partnership with Brownicity, which our friend Dr. Lucretia Berry started as an organization, just helping to educate people with history of the U.S., history of racism in our country, and anti-racism work. And what Global Glory Chasers is all about, it really grew out of a pain in the pandemic that we as a family couldn't travel. We love to travel. We love to learn about other cultures. And so basically, you know, one day we had no intention of publicly sharing this, but my husband said, let's, you know, bring Hawaii to our kids, because we had to cancel a trip to Hawaii that a couple different times. My family's from Hawaii, and it was such a disappointment. And so we kind of like, I like to say, we took lemons and we turned them into lemon meringue pie. it's like, okay, what can we do that we can
It's even
have this
better than lemonade.
experience, right? Can have this experience of learning about those cultures. So basically, I've curated along with my family books, resources, music, recipes, so that someone who's a member of Global Glory Chasers can travel to a new country every month from the comfort of their home. And they can use those resources how they want. It might be like a weekly family night. It might be a once a month kind of exploration that they do, or they could use all the resources if they are really ambitious, or maybe like a homeschool mom. So that's a little bit about what Global Glory Chasers is.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a fellow lover of travel and the globe and learning about the globe. But one thing that I know for sure is that if someone is signed up for that, that they're going to get excellent work. Dorina is just everything that she does with excellence. And not to put pressure on you, Dorina, but it's just something I've noticed. You just put everything into whatever you are offering out, whether that's, you know, an article online or this. And so I hope that people will join, because even if we do get to start traveling again, it even seems like it would be something good to do, kind of like to kind of perk your curiosity about where you might want to go, or what, you know, like maybe even pre-trip, like getting a little taste of something. So
Definitely.
I'm really excited to see where this goes and how it impacts people. So thank you for sharing about that. One last question before we end here.
Okay.
What is bringing you joy right now?
Well, for sure, summer break, which commences today.
Yes.
But I will say, and kind of related to the Global Glory Chasers, in this season of life, I am enjoying cooking with my kids. And honestly, I've been cooking with them since they were toddlers. I have invited them into the kitchen since they were little. And I know some people probably think I'm crazy, but a messy kitchen doesn't intimidate me. But in this season of life, especially with a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and 15-year-old, they get to lead in the kitchen. And so it's their curiosity and their creativity that I see comes alive. And I've always loved cooking. I come from a long line of mamas and grandmas who have food as their love language. And to see that kind of in different ways come alive in my kids is so amazing. So even just that, I could wake up on a Saturday morning and my 10-year-old is like, Mom, I'm going to make you, waffles for breakfast. And I don't have to go to the kitchen with her. So here's hope for the future, right?
That sounds amazing. We're not there yet.
If you're not there yet, it's okay. But take the time to train them now, because it is a fruitful thing for the future. And actually, gathering in the kitchen is something that's really precious to me and where I find a lot of joy.
I love that. And yes, I want that. I don't know if it'll be the same here, but I love that that is a reality for you. And I've loved some of the pictures you've shared of your kids cooking. I think it's wonderful. It's inspiring. Well, thank you so much, Dorina. And thank you so much to those of you who have joined. We'll be saving this so you could rewatch it or share it with friends. But yeah, really just thankful, Dorina, for your willingness to come on here and kind of share part of your journey and your heart to encourage so many other women of color. So thanks again, guys. We are done.
Thank you, Tasha.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Good to see you all. Thanks for tuning in.